In this video, I'm going to be talking about avian influenza, or how it's more commonly known, bird flu. A lot of my videos can be directed at quite a wide audience, people who are already falconers, people who are wanting to get into falconry, and people who just find it interesting. If you are one of those people that just finds it interesting, then hopefully you can learn something from this and hopefully you will still enjoy it. However, this video is directed more towards current bird owners and future bird owners. And there are a few things that we're going to go over in this video, including what is avian influenza, where does it come from, how to recognise it in your own birds, if you as an owner are at risk, and finally, how to best protect yourself and your hawk against it. Avian influenza isn't going away, so it's best to be as familiar as you can with it. First up, what is avian influenza? Bird flu is a viral infection, similar to the flu that we get as humans. There are 4 different types of influenza. Type A, which is bird flu, and that's what we're going to be discussing today. Type B tends to affect humans. Type C affects humans and pigs. And type D affects pigs and cattle. And the influenza virus can be split into 2 different categories based on its pathogenicity, its potential to cause disease. There are low pathogenic avian influenzas and highly pathogenic avian influenzas, and they are the ones that cause the most risk. There is multiple strains of HPAI, and there could potentially be up to 200 different variations, but the most common one is H5N1. The H refers to hemagglutinin, and that's a protein that causes blood cells to clump together, and the 5 is referring to the type of hemagglutinin. The N stands for neuraminidase, and the 1 refers to the type of neuraminidase. And this is an enzyme that allows the virus to escape the host cell. But in order to understand that, let's take a quick look at how viruses work. Viruses are incredibly small, and when compared to something like us, their structure can be relatively simple. They tend to just be the genetic material encapsulated in protein. Viruses cannot replicate by themselves, so they have to infect a host cell. They inject their genetic material into the host cell, and then the host cell is used to replicate that genetic information. Once a bunch of replicas have been made, they encapsulate themselves in protein, and the host cell dies, releasing these new viruses to go and infect other host cells. So how does it infect birds? It can be transferred through physical contact, but the government's official list of how it is transferred includes the introduction of diseased birds, contact with diseased flocks, through wild birds, contaminated fecal matter around the farm, such as walking it into sheds on footwear or on clothing and equipment, vermin or wild birds getting access to poorly maintained houses, feed or bedding, birds drinking from contaminated water sources, birds eating contaminated food, contamination of vehicles, equipment, clothing and footwear which are moved between and within farms, using shared farm equipment and vehicles which have not been effectively cleansed or disinfected, and unsatisfactory cleaning and disinfecting of vehicles, sheds, feeding troughs or other equipment. Now that list from the government was largely referring to farms, because that's when bird flu can become really dangerous. When a wild bird passes it to a captive poultry farm, it has the ability to spread really easily. All the birds on a poultry farm are usually housed within quite close proximity, and there is usually quite a lot of them, so it becomes a massive reservoir for the infection. But as falconers, how it's most dangerous to our hawks is when they come in physical contact with an infected wild bird. How do you recognise bird flu? Knowing your hawk is really important in being able to spot an illness early on. Raptors are really good at hiding signs of illness, but if you know your hawk well enough, there are certain symptoms that you should be able to spot early on. Things like loss of appetite, general lethargy, drooping of the wings, and issues with their breathing. And again, the government has an official list of symptoms, and this includes sudden and rapid increase in the number of dead birds found, several birds affected in the same shed or airspace, a swollen head, closed and excessively watery eyes, lethargy and depression, recumbency and unresponsiveness, incoordination and loss of balance, head and body tremoring, drooping of the wings and or dragging of legs, twisting of the head and neck, swelling and blue discoloration of comb and rattles, hemorrhages on the shanks of the leg and under the skin of the neck, loss of appetite or marked decrease in feed consumption, sudden increase or decrease in water consumption, respiratory distress such as gaping, mouth breathing, nasal snickling, a coughing sound, sneezing, gurgling or rattling, fever or noticeable increase in body temperature, discoloured or loose watery drop-ins, cessation or marked reduction in egg production. Are you at risk? While there are cases of humans becoming infected with bird flu, it's not common. And even if your hawk does unfortunately get bird flu, it's still unlikely that you will catch it. The people who are most likely to catch bird flu are those in higher risk situation. People who work on infected poultry farms or medical staff who are treating somebody who is already infected with bird flu. People have caught bird flu in the past by eating uncooked poultry products that came from a high-risk area too. So while it is possible, it's not really worth you losing any sleep over. So finally, as a bird keeper, what is the best way for you to keep yourself and your hawk protected from highly pathogenic avian influenza? It's all about biosecurity measures. Biosecurity is the prevention of disease-causing agents entering or leaving any place where they can pose a risk to farm animals, other animals, humans, or the safety and quality of a food product. Biosecurity for us falconers can be a little bit different to the government's guidance, as that's directed mainly towards poultry farms. While the use of personal protective equipment does make a lot of sense for a poultry farmer, as a falconer, dressing yourself up in overalls and gloves and a mask isn't going to do much for just you and your hawk. But you do need to think about the fact that you can carry the virus on your own clothes into your hawk's housing. If you have been in a high-risk area or near a poultry farm, you should change your clothes before going to interact with your hawk. Take extra caution with footwear. It's really good practice to use a foot dip before you enter the lawn or your hawk's housing. And this can just be a tray with an approved disinfectant at a depth of 20 centimeters. But you have to make sure that you refresh the disinfectant regularly. I will include a link below to DEFRA's list of approved disinfectants for this. Practice good hygiene. This is something that you should be doing as a bird keeper anyway, but you might want to up your practices during a bird flu outbreak. Make sure that all of your cleaning equipment is wiped down before it is used to clean your hawk's housing. Ensure that your glove and hawking bag is kept clean, and clean your travel box and wipe down your vehicle before using it. And you have to make sure that your food prep area is kept clean. Enclosure maintenance is also really important, making sure that there are no gaps or holes that vermin or wild birds can get access to. Make sure that your hawk's housing has a solid roof so that wild birds can't contaminate it from above. And make sure there is no standing water that can get into the aviary, and provide your bird with fresh, clean water in a bath. Where biosecurity becomes really difficult for us as falconers is avoiding wild birds. Bird flu typically hits the UK around a similar time as the open hunting season, and so the government does allow falconry to continue, and you are allowed to keep flying your birds, but you must take caution. The best way to prevent your hawk from getting bird flu would be to stop flying it and free loft it in an aviary. However, bird flu is a recurring thing, it's not going away, and there's not really a viable way to create a vaccine, so many people would disagree with this. It's entirely up to you as an owner to weigh up the risks and decide what is best for you and your hawk. If you do continue to fly, then you must take measures to prevent your hawk from getting bird flu. Avoid waterfowl like ducks, as these are the biggest wild carriers of bird flu. Stay away from areas of water like ponds and lakes so your hawk doesn't have a chance to hunt things like waterfowl, and try not to feed your hawk wild-caught birds whilst there is a bird flu outbreak. An excellent way to reduce the risk of your hawk from catching bird flu is to keep yourself educated and up to date with the news. You can sign up with the APHA to be notified whenever there is a confirmed case, and they will tell you the location and the seclusion zone so that you can make sure that you stay well away. There is also an online map that shows all of the current confirmed cases. I will leave a link to that below so that you can check that it's not a high risk area where you fly your birds. And if you have any concerns at all, then consult your vet for the best practices and what would be best for you and your hawk. Bird flu is a risk that us as falconers have to deal with. We can't hide away from it, and it's not going away. But as long as you keep up with what's going on and implement these biosecurity measures, it will hopefully reduce the risk. If you do have any questions about this, then please leave it as a comment below and I'll do my best to answer it. However, I am not a vet, and they are the best people that you should be getting advice off. Make sure to like and subscribe, and as always, thank you for watching.